friends, and welcome to the CUInsight Network. My name is Robbie Young. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Growth here at CUInsight, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with thought leaders who support the credit union community. In each episode, we are going to identify issues affecting credit unions and have discussions on best practices so that we can all gain a few insights and learn and improve for our credit unions. My guest on today's show is Pete Hilger, CEO of Allied Solutions. Pete, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Robbie. I'm looking forward to a great conversation today.
Well, we'll dive right in. Most of us didn't think we were going to work with credit unions when we were growing up. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, let's face it, most of us didn't know what a credit union was, so that surely wasn't the dream. It's been a great result. But when I grew up, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to work for anybody. Pretty free-spirited young man. Did a lot of things that I wasn't a really well-behaved child, but I was creative. And so I wanted to be an entrepreneur so I could control my own destiny. I could make the impacts where I wanted to make them. And I could control the amount of money I wanted to make and how I wanted to make it.
I love that. And I respect I wasn't a very well-behaved child, but you were creative. So what was the journey like to get to your current role as CEO of Allied Solutions?
Well, it's interesting because my mom raised us. My dad was really non-existent when we grew up. And as I said earlier, I was creative. And so I was making a decision at the young age of 16 and then a bigger one at the age of 17. I was getting married and I was that fork in the road. And the fork was either an unknown path that could be filtered with all sorts of risks and dangers that life presents you, or something that I ended up choosing, and that was a safer, more disciplined path. I joined the military. I was in the Air Force for 4 years, one of the greatest experiences I've ever had. It helped mature and develop me and grow me as a person, both as a family member and as a professional. And during that time, I had a top secret clearance, did a lot of interesting things in the military. But going back to that entrepreneurial approach to things, I was actually getting ready to extend my enlistment and heading up to Anchorage, Alaska. And my brother called me and he said, "Hey, you're always so creative. What are you doing? Re-enlisting for 5 more years. In the military, if you're there for 20 years, you get a pension." He goes, "That means you'll have been for 9 years total, 4 that you just completed and 5 more. You're going to know everything you make from this point on," which is not a bad career path, by the way. And so he sold me the fact that I had a top secret clearance, and he had this vision and idea that we would start a document data destruction business where we would destroy confidential data. And so I took the risk and moved my family, and we started a company from ground zero up, undercapitalized, really not a lot of knowledge on how to run a company between my brother and I. Hard work can carry you a long way, but at some point you need to have the disciplines and the insight on how a company runs. And I call it my college education during the period of time that we did that. We ended up selling that. And at that time, I had now 3 little ones and a wife. And I thought, all right, I'm going to have to find a good job because I've got to be able to grow. The first time I was going out into the job market other than the military and literally having to conclude that I was going to work for somebody. My brother, Chris, was running the CEO position of running my mom's company. At that time, it was Eldridge Lender Services. Called up and said, "Hey, why don't you try this out for a while?" He goes, "See how it works. Come work for us." We had 35 employees then. And he goes, "You can be a service rep." So I started out as a service rep for back then Eldridge Lender Services, and now which is now Allied Solutions. Think of that for the credit union listeners of you starting out as a teller at your credit union, and then growing from that position up. And so how I got into Allied Solutions was as a service rep. And in our world, because we have so many family members that have and do work for us, you live by a different set of standards. And those are much higher standards than any other employee within the company. You don't get the benefit of the doubt. The expectations is much higher. And it went from one area within the company to another, to another. Eventually, I became the president of the organization back in 1998 or so, maybe 2000, somewhere about there. Time's flying by. And then in 2004, we sold the company to CUInsight, our parent company, a Fortune 500 company. My partner and brother, Chris Hilger, as well as our partner and brother, Dave Hilger, continued to run it. Chris then became the CEO of CUInsight, I think in 2016, and I became the CEO of Allied Solutions, and the rest is kind of history.
That is amazing. I love those types of stories because they're so non-traditional. And I think, like you mentioned, that's so common in the credit union space where we can see somebody start as the teller and round out their career as the CEO. And I think that's one thing I love so much about this industry.
No, it's a great industry, and you're absolutely right. And I tell you what, it makes you pretty whole in totality when you're looking at your capabilities and your understanding from ground up of an organization. I think it makes you a stronger and better leader.
100%. So, can you tell me a little bit more about Allied Solutions and where they add value to credit unions?
Oh, sure, Ken. And I won't, the industry knows who we are from a standpoint of our brand, our name, really in detail what we do. I spoke at our client networking conference, and one of the things I think people don't realize is Allied Solutions on its own impacts the industry financially by over $3 billion a year. That's a big number. That's a really big number. And we do it in a combination of different ways. We have significant capabilities to generate both interest fee income for clients. And by the way, that $3 billion is not including any impact we have on interest income from clients. We look at that as they establish the rates, they establish the loan structure that they want to use, and they make that interest income. This $3 billion is outside of that. So if you started seeing the impact we made just on the interest side, it's even a bigger number. And the $3 billion is conservative. But we do it through non-interest fee income. Your products like debt cancellation, gap, warranty, I can go on and on. There's a ton of them. We also are the largest asset risk management company in the credit union industry. And so we recover and touch over 1 million repossessions a year for the industry. And we touch them in different ways. Those turn into real dollars and savings to both benefit the member by reducing their financial liability with an outstanding balance, reducing charge-offs or enhancing recoveries for the institution. And it's a whole list of different services out there. And then the other piece that we do is we are, when people sell insurance, and sometimes when somebody sells insurance, the feeling is, oh, he's an insurance guy. Well, if you really love your industry and understand what you do and the impact you make on individuals, that experience that consumer has after they've paid for the insurance when they have to utilize that benefit, that's where the satisfaction comes. That's where you become very rewarding as a leader when you can help those people. And so it's those claim dollars from those products that we sell that benefit the member, that help the stability of that loan or that experience that the institution has. And so when you start including all those things together, that's how you come up with in excess of a $3 billion impact to the industry itself.
That's amazing and so important. So we know delinquencies are on the rise, and a lot of credit unions are feeling stretched when it comes to managing risk. Could you share how Allied Solutions is stepping in to support during times like this?
Sure, Ken. And this is part of that creativity, that entrepreneurship that Allied and his leadership team continuously bring to the market. And it's in collaboration with a lot of the many different partners that we have out there in the marketplace. And I won't specifically mention any names simply because if I forget one, they'll get mad at me. But so we took all these different little column widgets that manage these delinquent challenges that the credit unions have. And they've really imploded because of the loans that were written in 21, 22, and 23 for so many complex issues, whether it be escalating interest rates or record high used car values, free money from the government to help everybody get through COVID, maybe a little bit of a lack of discipline and underwriting on the institution side. But the reality is the results are what they are. And we all live with the results because we've created the reason why those results are what they are. And so we created all these widgets and we put them together. And now we could literally add a credit union client every week of the year It would be irresponsible because we couldn't manage and deliver the quality service we have. But it's all about asset recovery management. It's about taking that delinquent loan, working through recovering that asset, working through fulfilling the compliance side of things to ensure that the member or the consumer has the benefit to, for example, redeem the car if they want, all the way down to the disposition of that collateral. And there are so many fallouts from what COVID had, but one of them is all the small mom and pop companies that are all regionalized that used to do this are no longer around. So being able to take the power of many, and the many being our credit union partners, and the opportunities that exist, the opportunities being those loans that are challenged or being charged off or causing losses, and combining all those efforts and energies into a solution that's industry leading when it comes to recovering dollars for credit unions, minimizing the impact of the losses. And it really is a ripple down effect. It helps the institution, which helps their overall membership because they're owners. But it also helps that consumer that's had an unfortunate period of time in their life where maybe they had to have their car repossessed, et cetera, to minimize the loss and exposure that they ultimately are going to be responsible for. So it's pretty exciting, and it will continue to grow. We'll have recovered $250 million in 2025. We expect recovering for our credit partners over $500 million in 2026 and growing. So it's impactful for them.
Certainly impactful. So non-interest income is something a lot of credit unions are looking to grow, especially with tight margins. How is Allied Solutions helping credit unions explore new ways to generate income, especially through digital channels?
Well, that's a great question. And it's that challenge that taking risk, testing, and investing will solve. Nobody has it solved yet. We woke up all of a sudden having to figure out how to work from home, not having that face-to-face contact anymore when COVID hit. And, there's silver linings in every crisis, right? And so that crisis has expedited AI, it's expedited digital engagement, it's expedited so many things that we now have to think and work and function differently at a very rapid turnover of how we used to do things. So we're investing in fintechs. Finifer is one of them that we have out there. We're representing, and we own several different parts of CUSOs now, Finifer being one. We're investing in other type of lending assets, but really it's that digital engagement we're investing and testing in. We've got a great platform in what we call Sunday Sky, which is a personalized digital engagement video that's interactive. So when you're not having direct contact with that consumer, we have the ability to actually close a loan, introduce, educate, sell a product, add to a loan, have all the documents signed electronically without the institution having to have contact with the consumer at all. So it's really those type of investments that we're putting forth to the market. And then the big thing is the testing of those. Nobody has it figured out yet. Anybody that says, we're going to make a big impact today, but it's not about today. It's about getting into next year, towards the end of next year and going into 2027, I think is where you'll really see a big impact in digital engagement between the institution and the consumer to increase loans, increase cross-selling and non-interest fee income. Very exciting.
So much going on over there for sure. You'd seem at no loss of things to do. So earlier on, you mentioned that transparency and trust are big parts of how Allied Solution does business. Can you talk about what that actually looks like in a partnership with credit unions?
I sure can. And I tell you what, this is core to our brand. It's the ethics that we demand with not only our partners, but all of our employees, especially our salespeople. Sometimes you can get carried away in sales because you're so intense on winning that you really need to focus on the transparency. And that's full disclosure of everything. I can tell you that if a client wants to know anything about the numbers behind the product, if they want to know anything about the product itself, because insurance at times can be gray, we'll show it to them. We'll open up the books. And as long as we go into it in a full disclosure, transparent manner where everybody realizes they have to make money. The last thing a credit union who wants to be a real partner wants is their partner and provider not to be able to fulfill their commitments and not to be able to be a prosperous, profitable, vibrant company. And so just really taking and showing them where all the dollars are, how all the widgets and tools work, how we function. I mean, we'll even go down as telling them what our internal allocation is. And we're a pretty lean, mean company when it comes to the expense to run our organization. And so it's literally just sharing everything dollar wise that we do. It's a mandate we have with our partners as well because we count on a lot of data from them. And then providing them that data and having those face-to-face meetings that really the equation of all that is trust. And if they don't trust you, everything can't be put into a contract. They're not going to do business with you long term. And if you look at I'm not saying we don't have a few clients here and there that probably would say, well, that's not true. And maybe their interpretation of what happened or didn't happen was different. You can't put everything into a contract, but your word and your face-to-face discussion with somebody is what trust is all about. And that's what we try to bring to the marketplace.
So important. And as we discussed a little bit earlier before we started this, I've known your team for almost 10 years now. And I can truly say that trust and transparency and all the excitement that you bring to this conversation, you can certainly tell it extends throughout the organization. So as we look into the future, you mentioned some of these things, but what is Allied Solutions' focus for the road ahead?
Well, the big ones, technology and our people, and having that fine balance of making sure you have the highest quality of individuals. And people may disagree with this, but in my mind, the human factor is the biggest factor. And if you're not treating your employees and your people with respect, giving them opportunities and investing in them, just as you are investing in technology, I think you're shortchanging the big picture. With that said, one of the things that we do invest a ton in is the fintech world. There's fintechs coming out of the woodwork left and right, but there are some really good ones, and we have a very vibrant M&A pool. Companies that we buy minority interests in, companies that we buy all of them majority interest in, all driven by about technology, data, making data. And people have heard me say this for years, but we're getting so close to making data meaningful and being able to show you how we can get an ROI out of it. I mean, we are getting really close to some very, very exciting things with the help of a lot of our partners, which are key. Business process management and improvement, getting more capacity per FT for full-time employee, and then reducing our costs and diversifying where our revenue streams are to ensure that we can handle the storms that are sure to come in the future. And one thing about Allied and in those investments is when things are bad economy-wise, we have things that still make us very strong. When things are good, the same thing. We have a different set of tools and resources that make us strong. So it makes us here for the journey, the long journey, and it's going to make sure that whether we're investing in AI, other technology platforms, or our people, we're going to continue to be the industry leader in many of the markets we represent in the crediting industry.
So important. And it sounds like you guys are really well positioned to be able to do that. So to wrap up the show, I'd like to have some fun with some rapid fire questions to let our listeners get to know you better. The questions are rapid, but your answers certainly don't have to be. Do you think you're ready?
I think I am ready.
Awesome. So who is someone in your life that is a great leader and what makes them great?
So it's interesting because earlier this week, I had a great experience, just a phenomenal experience with some wonderful speakers. And I'm going to tell you who my real hero is in a second. But this individual founded the Folds of Honor. And I tell you what, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. And it was Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney. The person has made such an impact, whether it be fighting for our country's freedom or looking after those families from, unfortunately, veterans that lost their lives, military combat folks. And so he became an instant hero for me. He was an F-16 fighter pilot, The story is very, very emotional when you hear what he has and very spiritual. And so just as a little added color, that's kind of my new hero. But my big hero is my mom. She literally raised all four of us as a single mom, extremely poor, a woman back then in the late 70s in a man's world. It was tough being a woman leader at that time. You had to have ice in your veins. You had to put up with a lot of unfortunate things that I'm happy our world's resolving. I'm a huge supporter of women leaders in not only the credit union industry, but in industries in general. But she was tough. Man, was she tough. She ran a disciplined household, was on the road all the time trying to make money, but showed us two things, and that's respect for each other, respect for humanity, and love. It gets me choked up when I talk about her today. She's still vibrant. She's 82 years old. She is my hero, and she will continue to be my hero forever. She is just an unbelievable woman.
Sounds like she could be my hero too. I mean, I am not surprised that you mentioned her in this just from the couple things you said at the beginning of the conversation. It's amazing and so important, but I think two great people you pointed out there. So shout out to your mom. If you are going to splurge on something and you want to treat yourself a little bit, what would that thing be?
Well, there's two. Today, for the last 35 years, work has been my job and work has been my hobby. And so what I like to splurge on is my wife. She's been my heart and soul when it comes to my work, allowing me to focus and sacrifice at the highest levels to deliver what I feel is my mission to help credit unions and financial institutions in general, to help the 2,100 strong employees that Allied has have successful and vibrant lives. And she's done a lot of sacrificing. So when I can splurge, I love to splurge on her. And then the other one was travel. We love to travel. When we travel, we like to travel in comfort. And so the times that we get to travel on our own, we like to really splurge on what we do and where we go and go to special places where we can spend it the time with friends and family. So those would be the two things I have the passion for.
Okay, I'm going to pull that thread a little bit. When you're traveling, what's the city you're most excited to visit?
Well, in the U.S., I would tell you the city that I like the most would be Charleston, South Carolina.
Right by me.
Yeah, beautiful. I love Charleston. Yeah, I know it's a smaller city, but you just feel comfortable there. And there's so much to do. You have the water. We love the water, but it's a comfortable, cozy city. And it's one of our favorites.
So what is one book that you think everyone should read?
It's easy. It's called Tools of Titan. Tools of Titans was written by Tom Ferriss, and he actually interviews CEOs throughout the world in all sorts of different industries. And you can really find out and learn about the different vibes that make people tick. And those who know me, I'm not a big reader. I'm not. There's so many things going on. I probably should be more of one. The Tools of Titans is the book that probably I look at and go back to and read sections of it and reference great leaders that teach you little nuggets throughout your journey in life and your profession.
My reading list is getting rather long from having these conversations. So I'm going to have to become more of an avid reader too, or avid listener anyway, because that's where I find it's easiest for me to get those things accomplished. What's your take on work-life balance?
Well, now there's two different views on it. My view is I have none and I don't want any. I've got a mission to do and a purpose and a drive, both personally and for the people that I mentioned in our discussions today. However, I'm also a realist, and the world has changed. It's very healthy to have a good work-life balance. I guess my way of trying to do it for myself is working out. It gives you that hour and a half to just cleanse your mind, think outside of the box without the pressures of what's going on around you 24/7. But I also don't want to be foolish enough to think that it doesn't matter. And that doggone phone that people gave us that everybody thinks has to have tied to their hip, you can create all the work-life balance you want. Set the thing down and walk away from it. It's terrible. I can't. And when I do, sometimes you feel empty. You're almost jealous. You've probably been through this, Robbie, where you're with somebody, they have their phone and you don't. and they're all looking at it. You're thinking, what do I do? I need my phone. And so setting that thing down and literally just spending time with what's around you versus what's in your hand and all that data it has, that would be the first step of work-life balance. And then if you can do it, and I hope all you can, set aside when you're with your family. I have 4 grandchildren that, I don't have a long time left in my career. And I've made decisions in my life as to my work-life balance, which is not that well balanced, but make it a priority. That doesn't mean you have to say, I'm going to take 6 hours a day off. I mean, some people have gone extreme. You got to have work in order to make money so you can have life. But it's important. And I think that you all need to find your why in that work-life balance.
I think that is so important. And I am with you on the work-life balance being working out. That's my current work-life balance too. I have 2 kids and a busy life. And you know what? My work-life balance is that hour and a half I take away to go to the gym.
So true.
So we'll be sure to link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. But my last question for you is, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share or asks of our listeners?
You know what? I'll just share what I do every day. And that is I wake up every day on the positive side, on the right side of the bed. I focus on contributing and winning. And it's not winning for me. It's winning for everyone on my team and everybody that's engaged in the relationship or partnerships we have. I live a very unselfish life full of gratitude. And then smile. Man, is it contagious. Even somebody who's treating you poorly, somebody that just doesn't seem to be a nice human being, if you just smile, it goes a long way. And I think that we all need to do more of that. I do it every day.
Such powerful words, Pete. Thank you again so much for being on the show. Stay well, and thanks to all of our listeners today for tuning in to the CUInsight Network. We'll be back again next time.